I'm here with Andy from Motion Plus Cycle. You can check him out at www.motionpluscycle.com. He's the head mechanic for Team Motion Plus Racing. So Andy, what are we doing here today?
Today we are going to replace a fuel pump in the sending unit on a gsxr 600. Had some issues running on the track a week ago. We think we got issues with the fuel pump. We're also going to put some heat material underneath the tank so we don't have to worry about fuel boiling or any kind of a vapor lock issue. By doing this, I think the heat produced by the engine up into the tank will have a lot better insulation on it. We'll show that after we do the pump. So first, what you have to do, I've drained all the gas to save time. 5mm Allen bolts, there's 5 of them in here. I've already loosened them up. And we tip it upside down. I got a nice pig mat here so we don't scratch the tank, and if there's any extra fluids that comes out, it gets caught. Now the pump comes out, but turn it like 90 degrees, and that way the sending unit and everything will just pop right out and bring it up out. If you try to pull it out this way, you'll end up bending the sending unit, possibly can't get that through the hole. So what we're going to do, I have another pump here we're going to use because this one's got gas in it. We're also, every time we replace fuel pump, we replace the O-ring. If it's new, you probably won't need to, but obviously this has been in here a while, so we're going to just replace the O-ring. Make sure this is all clean. While we're in here, we're going to make sure there's no debris, water, what we got in the tank, make sure we didn't have any fuel issues. So now we'll set that aside, and we're going to come over here and actually dismantle the pump. This is the sending unit. The pump is right here, and there's a screen, or what they call your filter or sock, down inside the little cup. That all comes with the new pump kit. You get the new screen or sock, the pump itself, and then we have an O-ring where it pushes up into, and then depending on what you have, they have a different wiring harness. So first thing we're going to do, we have to get this whole section out of this cup. And how we do that, we have 2 7mm nuts here. One's your power wire, the other one's for your sending unit. And you spin them off, 7mm wrench. They just got a little lock washer on them. They'll break loose fairly easy. We don't want to over tighten. And just spin those off, and the little lock washer, we'll set them aside. Lock washer, then we just pull these up. Now when we put this back in, pay attention to not have these go out to where they hook and off the side. We want them to be deep, tight to the thing, so when we put it back through the hole, we don't have any issues going in. I'll show you why. I noticed this pump before, that when it did go in there, somebody had we didn't get it up nice and tight, and when they put it in, it tore the insulation and it tore the little coating on the actual power wire. So what we needed to do, this one got put in on this side. The wires should have probably come over, went down here on this side. Next thing we're going to do to get this cup out here, we put them aside. The large wire, the large white wire, is your large red wire to your pump. The other one's your sending unit wire. Then we've got 2 Phillips screws, one on each side of the little carrier. And that's also your grounds, and your grounds are once again for the sending unit, one for the fuel pump. We're going to take those out. Now when we take those out, they have what's called a little J-nut that has to come off, and so you don't lose it. Same with the other side. Just take that off, take the little J-nut off, set them aside. And now this whole unit should pop up out of there like it does. Now, as you can see here, with the rust and the debris in the bottom, this is a major issue why we need to definitely take these and look at them and look at the contaminants and the rust that's got on this screen. Not good. But we're going to take, before we put this back in, make sure and clean it all up. The O-ring goes on here. New O-ring goes on there. And that pushes up, and that's your actual fuel delivery out to your bike. So we're going to set that aside for now. We'll clean all that up later and come back to it. To do the pump now, Really pretty simple. We're gonna take a small screwdriver and you're gonna pop this little, you're gonna pop the little clip on the bottom that holds your isolator in and your sock or your screen. And we're gonna set this off to the side also, if I can get it off here. It's just a little plastic clip. Then you have your little rubber dampener for the bottom of the pump. And then we just kind of get under here and the little sock will pop off, maybe. As you can see, as I was pulling it, the rust coming out of this sock. That could have been a lot of our problems as far as causing the bike to starve for fuel, not picking it up through the sock. You can see with a sock or the filter that it should be just like anything else. You can see through it and totally blocked. Big issue. Sits in there and that's it. That's your whole fuel delivery system, and if it's sitting in rust and blocked, you have a chance to starve the bike for fuel. So once that's all done, what we need to do next is we can just pull the pump down. You can see there's also, that's your delivery rubber from the pump. And also you see here when I pull that out, the fuel from the tank has a lot of rust and debris in it. Now that already got by the pump, and could it be because the sock itself has a tear in it, or it's just pulling through the screen has issues and needs to be replaced. But you can see that this debris and rust is basically coming out of the pump, and that has already went through the screen, and that's going to be delivered to your injectors. Now if that's obviously to the injectors, the screen and the injectors will get plugged same way. So we definitely have to, something we probably want to do every once in a while.
What would you say?
I personally, if you're racing, depending on your race schedule, at least once a year. Fuels have a lot of contaminants in them. You can get a lot of sediment in the bottom of your tank. And like I say, that's going to go to the bottom. It's going to lay in this cup. You see debris, we see corrosion, we see rust, and we see that we've probably were starving the bike trying to pull through there. Possibly has a tear in it. You can see the debris and stuff on it. And it was getting past it and getting delivered out to the bike. So this could be a big cause of high-speed running on the track, bike popping, sputtering, just not having that extra top end that you need as you're going to track. Once we get this off, the rest of it's pretty simple.
Now for the street, could that be detrimental?
Well, for the street, we're not as much demand on the bike as we are on a racetrack. But anything, contaminants, fuel, water, obviously most of this rust is caused by probably number one, oxygenated fuels, which are fuels that have alcohol in them, absorb water from tanks on the street, and the deposits end up here, and the bottom line, you get water which will burn, but then you get sediments in the body of your tank when the bike sits over time. So now, to save time, I'm not going to go through all of this. It's just a reverse procedure because I want to get all these parts cleaned. Same thing, there's an O-ring up here that we go through, but I want to clean all this. But the pump basically, it slides back in, plugs back in the same way, and then we're going to do the same thing on the bottom, and we're going to put the screen on, the rubber isolator, and then snap it back in. Once we get that back in, we go back over here to the cup. It can only go one way, a new O-ring, and that will slide down in, but we definitely want to clean this first. So just reverse the procedure. It's not that hard. Make sure the stuff's really clean. You definitely want to make sure you get all the rust and corrosion on here. I'm probably going to actually soak this part into what we have here is an acid dip tank, which will clean the metal and the rust and everything out of there, so I get everything out of it, including the line. When we reassemble, there again, if the pump's back together, we reassemble. We always use a new O-ring. Say you pull it down once a year. For what the O-ring costs, I would say you'd be silly not to. We don't want any leaking. We don't want anything going on where we got a crack in it. And like every O-ring, when they compress, they hold that shape, so a new one's going to seal much nicer. When you put the tank back in, or the pump back in the tank, we put the sending unit in, turn it, and basically you want to end up with the spigot towards the front. The pump will then go down there. Now, like I said, this one was put in wrong where the wire is caught. They should be over here. Once you get the pump in there, you turn it and lock it. The spigot goes out here to your bike like normal. That's all you have to do for the pump. It's not a real hard job. Time consuming. Make sure stuff's clean. We don't want sediment. You can see with that sock and that cup, we're probably having issues on the racetrack right now. The other thing we have an issue with is this tank sets your airbox here, but sets right over the crotch of the motor where a lot of heat builds up. Probably not as noticeable on streets, but when you're racing and you're wanting that every little bit, you do notice it. You get a lot of heat in your tank. Gasoline will absorb the heat. The next thing you know, on a racetrack, your gas is going to start building heat in the tank. You then have issues with, it shouldn't be a vapor lock issue with a fuel injection, but you can have some boiling issues. You can have some issues into the pump itself. What we've got is a CV4, and we've run this on road racing. We've run this on motocross. When you're racing, you get a lot of heat buildup. So what we've done is we have a it's a fiberglass with a foil insulated stick-on piece of material, and I've already cut this one out, but it comes in a sheet. You can get it through Moose Racing or CV4. It comes in a sheet big enough to do pretty much any tank like this. And what we're going to do is basically for the holes, I had laid it in there and cut it out. For the holes, I have regular punches. We marked the vent lines, and we marked around the pump itself, and basically we're just going to put that in the line and stick it down here, and we're hoping that the heat radiates back away from the gasoline. That's what we're shooting for. Now obviously long runs you're going to build up some heat, but any little bit helps. What we want to do is keep any heat from absorbing into this tank that we can, and keep the fuel cool. Also, probably a little bit overkill, the line going to feeding the injectors, we've also wrapped that just to try to keep heat out of the lines. Though there again, this is for racing. This is something that we want every little bit. And when you get this kind of heat, you're talking 90 degrees, 100 degrees on the track, and you're holding the bike up in 14 to 16,000 RPM. We got to have the fuel as cool as we can. The power density is better, and we got to make sure we don't have any kind of an issue with our pump failure. So that is basically what we're going to do here. What we've done, the pump, I would recommend that anybody, as you can tell with these, that anybody that's out there on the street racing, whatever, from the types of fuels that you can see there, this is probably a big issue that a lot of people say, my bike doesn't run right, it's cutting out, and you could see before with the corrosion on the pump that it has been setting in water, and it's got corrosion and it's got rust, and could cause a lot of issues. Now that's obviously, if it's that bad here and it's went through there, then the brushes and everything inside the pump have got that too. So not a real hard job. Take your time, make sure everything's clean. Like I say, we're going to go through and acid dip this one, clean it. If you need it done, we don't have any problem setting up for racing. Bring it on in. Another big thing people think of is when I put fuel in, I want 108 octane. I want high octane fuel. It burns hotter. That's actually a myth. Higher octane fuel slows the burn rate. The most volatile fuel and the highest BTUs is the low octane fuel 87. But what we want to do is a bike that's hot, that's built for power, that has the exhaust change, and we want every little bit out of it. We want to slow that burn rate because we don't want pre-ignition. We don't want the fuel to ignite before it's supposed to and get the best power you can get. So people who think that they're putting in 108, 110, and that's great, really does nothing for you different than 97 to 103, depending on how your bike is built. The idea is if we slow down the burn rate, we get the optimal power when your bike's supposed to bring it in and flash. That's what we're looking for. So octane, higher octane is good for racing. It's better for performance, but you don't need to go extreme with aviation fuel and go to 107 octane. But a lot of your issues, as you can see with this fuel pump, it wouldn't do with octane at all. It would do with the alcohol and the sediment and the corrosion that we get in the system. So that's pretty much it. The rest of it is just bolting the tank back on the bike. And we're also on this bike for James, we're also going to clean the injector rail, because you could see that there was some rust and some sediment that went by. We want to make sure that his injectors are spraying a perfect cone spray per cylinder when he's on it. We're asking everything out of this bike on the track, especially in the summer when it gets hotter. So with the heat shield, the new pump, everything clean, the new sock, 97 octane fuel, or about there, 100 octane, and the injector's clean. I don't think we'll have any issues with our fuel pump, fuel pressure, or anything else there, and we take that right out of the picture of this bike. That's probably the best. This pump that you can get through Suzuki, and they only sell it as an assembly. That's why we're doing this. This assembly is $600. If you go on eBay or something aftermarket, you might have the same problems you've just got here started with and have to redo it anyhow. There is a company, and they're the only ones around, that I would recommend. They're called High Flow, and that's the pump, and it's a high volume, high flow fuel pump, and it's the whole kit for your bike. And this whole kit, I definitely recommend, was $70. So it's a little more work, but we know we have good clean parts. We put it in and we know what we have. If you get something off eBay, you don't know what you've got. And if you want to buy brand new, I guess you could do that, but you will be prepared to spend $600–700. So, anyhow, my name is Andy. I work here at Motions Plus, and we will see you on the track.